What's good, family? Hope you all have made at least 1% progress today. In today's video, I want to talk about my experience and my journey with practicing celibacy for 22 and a half months. Just a disclaimer that this particular journey lasted from the start of 2022, January 2022, up until November of 2023. Where there was a young lady that came along and, you know what I'm saying, I broke my streak. But anyways, there's neither here nor there. I'm just here to say that I did it. I did it. And before I kind of talk about the main takeaways I had during this journey, during this experience, I want to talk about how it is that I actually started into the journey. Like, what is it that motivated me to stay consistent with it, and kind of my why, right? So flashback back at the end of 2021, I had just gotten out of my longest relationship at the time. And, you know, in that moment, I told myself and I told my partner at the time that, you know, after this, like, I didn't want to date any other women. Like, I didn't want to have sex with anybody. Like, I really just wanted to focus on myself and improve the relationship with myself and really rebuild the mindset and mentality I had around, you know, women and dating and things like that. Prior to that relationship, I was one of those emotionally unavailable people where most of my interactions with women were just on the foundation of sex, right? And although, yes, I did do some of the romantic things, I wasn't vulnerable. I didn't open up. I wasn't that emotionally invested in, you know, my partner's feelings and how they felt about things. And I wasn't always the greatest communicator of my own feelings and things of that nature. And those were things that I was okay with, mainly because I just didn't know, right? I wasn't presented or told that, hey, like, you suck at this. And so it wasn't until that I got my heart broke that I realized that, man, like, maybe there is a reason outside of not growing up in a household and not seeing what love looks like, not really seeing what it means to cater to a woman looks like, and growing up and seeing my granddaddy being the Mac and taking on those skills. But that's neither here nor there. All of that to say is that I knew that I needed to spend some time with myself and by myself in order to reinvent who it is that I wanted to be, as well as the type of women that I wanted to attract, just to make sure that I was showing up as the healthiest version of myself. So as I got into this journey, like I said, I didn't date at all. I didn't have any sexual encounters with any women. It was strictly focused on myself and my goals, both in my career and personal life as well. And during the time, you know, everybody kind of has a different definition or different parameters and boundaries in which they practice celibacy, right? There's people who practice complete abstinence, where they don't engage in any type of sexual activity, right? Not with others or, you know, with themselves. And then there's those that, you know, practice celibacy where they might not engage in any sexual activity with anybody else, but they may engage in sexual activity with themselves. And so for me, I was the latter, right? I decided that, well, I didn't want to have any sexual encounters with anybody else, but I'm like, man, I'm a man and I need to get my rocks up, you know what I'm saying? And what I slowly started to learn and realize is that over the course of the months as it went by, is that we as men are often driven by ego, and sex has such a huge control over the ego, or a lot of men feel or fuel their ego through their sexual encounters with women. It can be very detrimental to our well-being, as well as the relationship that we have with women, right? And so as I started to kind of go through the motions, you know, and I had the moments where I was still watching you know, flicks and things, and you know, getting my rocks off with myself, I started to notice that there was a lot of energy that was being released from my body that could have been placed in other places. And so during the time, I started to learn more about semen retention, right? There's a lot, not a lot, but there's a good amount of men you see on social media who talk about semen retention, and they talk about it from a spiritual aspect, and the amount of energy that, that you're able to retain from not releasing your seed. And all of those things are true. I will say that I was able to build a strong relationship with God and be able to clearly hear that voice of reasoning, and identify what my purpose was in life. And I was grateful for that. But I think the thing that you won't see these men talk about too much is that, withholding all of that energy and not having a place to place it at can be just as difficult, or actually it's even more challenging, because now you've got all of that stored in you, and your body and your mind, like, they don't know where to place it. So there were a lot of times where, even when I didn't want to engage in with myself, like, my body would just naturally release semen. Being completely transparent. And I know y'all know about wet dreams and stuff like that. Like, I'm telling you that sometimes I didn't know where to place that energy, and I'd find myself waking up sometimes, not having a wet dream or anything, just wake up and, like, you know and at first I didn't really get it, right? And as I started to get closer to God, and more in alignment with my purpose in life and the identity I wanted to create with myself, I realized that energy needed to be put somewhere, right? Because it does you no good to retain that seed and not put it towards the things that God has called you to put those things toward. And so I started to, get more into the content creation. I started to do research around what it is that I wanted to help teach people about. I started to just take on and do different types of projects that allow for me to place that energy in different places. Now, that first year was a bit challenging because I still was, like I said, engaging in with myself. And for a lot of people, men specifically, we don't realize that, watching pornography places this false image and false idea about, what sex is supposed to be like or what it's supposed to look like. And it's also one of those things where, if a man has not identified his purpose in life or what it is that he's been called to do, porn is one of those things that is a sort of an outlet or a way for men to release themselves, because the energy in which it could be placed in something that may be beneficial, they haven't yet identified what that is. And so by default, porn is almost in alignment with, smoking or drinking alcohol, right? It's one of those things that, we as men will find comfort in because we don't know what else we should be doing. And this was something that took me a long time to realize. And then when I started to have those moments where I said, okay, now I just want to do away with, watching the flicks completely, and even engaging in those interactions with myself. One, because I know that it's not in alignment with what the Spirit wants me to do, what God wants me to do, but it's also not doing me any good because I'm still, in a way, creating false ideologies around sexual experiences with women. And that's the thing that I wanted to change. And so in doing so, right, I was able to gain a greater sense of self-control, right? It's like now when I look at women, right? And I'm not gonna say like I don't get ideas. I'm still a man. I get ideas, thoughts pop in my head, but I don't get the urge or like the quick, you know, reactionary thought to, sexualize every single woman that I might find to be attractive, right? Or the first thought that comes across my mind is not, oh, I want to engage in some type of sex, right? And also noting that in those moments where I felt, very, I guess, horny, for lack of better words, not deciding to go and engage in watching porn and with myself, but instead finding something else to put that energy towards, right? So I'm super grateful that I was able to find consistency within the gym, because that was one way that I was able to find an outlet to release energy. But even so, amongst that, just having that mental strength when I wanted to go in the bathroom and pull out my phone and just go at it, to say no, like, this is not what we want to do. Like, we do not want to move backwards. But I'll tell you that as a man, like, if you're watching this right now, that this is going to be extremely hard if you have not identified what your purpose is in life and what it is that God has called you to do. Because as a man falls short in life when he does not know what he's been called to do, right? So like when you spend a bunch of time procrastinating, you consider yourself to be bored, you really don't know who you are. It's because you haven't identified what it is that you should be doing. And if you're one of those people that's kind of in that situation right now, you're struggling with self-control and not able to go periods of time without having sexual interactions with other people, or even just engaging in with yourself, then it might be time for you to kind of take a moment to reflect on who you are now and who is it that you want to become, and acknowledge that you may not be the best version of yourself right now, and that's okay. But it's what is it that you can do in order to become that best version of yourself, right? And I think the foundational question, if you're not entirely clear on what your purpose is or what you've been called to do, is to ask yourself, what is it that comes easy to you that comes harder for other people? What is that one thing that when people need help or people have questions about it, they're going to come to you because they think you're the best person. They think you're the most qualified person to help them out, or be a resource for whatever it is that it may be. Or just think about those things that people give you a lot of acknowledgement about. They say you're really good, and they give you praise for it, but you kind of push it off and you say, nah, you take that humble approach of like, nah, it's nothing, da 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 da. Like, those are the things that in retrospect are what you've been called to do, right? And so the greatest thing about celibacy is it gives you that ability to have intentional focus on yourself and not allow the distractions of the flesh to rob you from exploring what it is that you've been called to do, what it is that this thing called life has granted you the skill and ability to add value to the world. Because all of us were innately born with a purpose, and it's up to the experiences in life and for us to be curious about what that is in order for us to get clear and identify what that is. And if we don't, we're going to find ourselves indulging in these other substances like alcohol and drugs and porn that continuously serve as coping mechanisms because we feel stuck, right? So if you take nothing else out of this, I know it kind of deterred a little bit from the main story. It's that if you are a man, especially if you are a man, I cannot speak from a woman's perspective, but especially if you are a man, I highly encourage you to practice some sort of celibacy or semen retention for you know, at least like 2 weeks. You know, like if you are a frequent if you have sex frequently, or you frequently, you know, watching porn and like, I highly encourage you to take some time and like not to do those things and really reflect on your experience during the time, right? Because I can tell you, and other people can tell you, that you'll get a lot of energy and, you know, you'll be able to find your purpose, which I don't know that you'll be able to do that in 2 weeks. I don't know. Maybe not. But what you get out of that is based on the intentionality that you have, and your experience is not going to be the same as everybody else's. But if you have the intentional purpose of getting something good out of it, something good can come out of that. But I encourage you to do so in the first place, for you to figure out if there is any worth from that experience. Especially if you're a man that is very impulsive, you have no self-control, and you have a flawed view on both yourself as well as women. Like, I'm telling you, it's a game changer. But I'm gonna leave that where it's at, because this video, it definitely lasted longer than I thought it was going to last. So I hope you found some value in this, and if you haven't yet, be sure to check out my first video where I talk about the 3 things you should stop doing in order to stop being undisciplined. Until next time, peace, be easy.